Can the Dallas Cowboys pass another test by beating a good team on the road? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are previewing the Cowboys-Bills Week 15 matchup. We're going to talk about the weather, matchups to exploit. We're going to give our predictions at the end of the show. But let's start with this, Landon. How big of a test is this for the Cowboys to go into Buffalo and try to beat a good team?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I think that, look, the Cowboys have finished the season here, right, with these 4 games with at Buffalo, at Miami, home against Detroit, and then at Washington. I think that this is the toughest of those 4 games, simply because of the scenarios around it. Don't look at the records. Don't look at any of the kind of ancillary stuff. Look at what's actually happening on the ground here, right? This is a Buffalo team that had Super Bowl expectations at the beginning of the season, as they have the last few seasons with Josh Allen, right? A lot of things bounced the wrong way. Frankly, anybody who's watched the Josh Allen season and you know the media circus around it, who's a Cowboys fan, probably feels pretty comfortable with what's happening with Josh Allen because it's the exact same thing that was happening in the media to Dak Prescott all of last season, right? He's thrown some interceptions in the kind of effort of trying to will his team into wins. And I think that, he's kind of suffered nationally as far as, media narratives go for it. But don't let that fool you. Don't let the fact that this is a close to 500 team fool you. This is a very good football team that is trying to claw their way into the playoffs. They're desperate.
Yes,
you're
that's
gonna have to
what I was going to say. They are desperate. They basically have to win out to make the playoffs.
That's right. And they are playing at home. So, Cowboys fans should not overlook this game. I guess this is all a big way of saying if the Cowboys win this game, I think that they've kind of taken this team to another level, frankly. This, to me, is the ultimate final test for getting into the playoffs. Beating a team that cannot lose on the road in an environment that you are not comfortable playing with in the rain, in the weather conditions, right? If the Cowboys can find a way to get into Buffalo and come out with the win, I think we can legitimately start having conversations about, where this team can go and how far the possibility of this team getting to the Super Bowl is.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why this is such a big test is because I kind of think Buffalo's still the best team in the AFC. I know the records don't show that, but you look at the point differential, you look at how many of these close games they've lost. I mean, they lost a game to the Broncos a few weeks ago because they had 12 guys on the field on the game-winning field goal. And then they've lost some wild games. The Eagles game, right?
It's very similar to the Cowboys, right? Yeah. Last year, right? It just feels a lot like the Cowboys they've suffered more losses than the Cowboys did last year. But there were so many opportunities where there's been stretches of really good play from this team that they didn't necessarily get rewarded for. That the ball bounced the wrong way or something happened or they ran into a buzzsaw of some sort. It's just a series of unfortunate events for the Buffalo Bills, which, makes them dangerous because their record does not reflect how good this football team is.
Yeah, I mean, they could go in. A perfect example, they were favored in Philadelphia against the Eagles a few weeks ago. Like, sports books were telling you that the Bills were as good or better than the Eagles on a neutral field, which is incredible. So, yeah, if they can go into Buffalo, win this game, I think we're having a different conversation about the Cowboys. Not that we're not already expecting this team to do big things, but You win that game,
Yeah.
I think confidence would be at an all-time high for the Cowboys.
I keep going back to, I don't know why this reminds me of this, but I keep going back to that New Orleans game where the Cowboys walked into New Orleans. I think they were undefeated at the time.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah, and DeMarcus Ware had like just hurt his neck, and there was no way that he was going to be able to play in this game. He shows up, and I'm pretty sure he makes an interception return for a touchdown or a fumble return for a touchdown or something like
Well,
that.
that's the game they started off with. Was it back-to-back Miles Austin touchdowns, and then it was
Yeah.
DeMarcus Ware who kind of sealed it with a game-winning sack, forced fumble.
Yeah, so I don't know why it's. I keep thinking about that game, but I think it's because it's just the difficulty of the task of what's being asked. I think it's not being hyped like that because obviously these guys are not undefeated and there's a lot of things that have gone wrong for them. But this is a very difficult task, an unfamiliar opponent, one of the best teams in the AFC. They have to win way more than the Cowboys need to win, right? Like, let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
The Cowboys are trying to win to get the number 1 seed to hope to get, playoff positioning.
Yes.
The Buffaloes are fighting for their playoff life right now. So you've got to find a way to beat a team that's desperate and good, and they're at home, and in their favorable weather conditions for them because they're used to it. These are all things that are pretty serious factors working against the Cowboys.
Yeah, and just to double down a little bit on why this means more for Buffalo, if Buffalo were to happen to win this game and then the Cowboys were to beat the Dolphins next week, Buffalo would actually be ahead in the AFC East to win that division and potentially host a home playoff game. So they have to win this game on Sunday. As for the Cowboys, look, the Cowboys will need Philadelphia to slip up somewhere in order to win the division. Unfortunately, it almost has to be against the Giants, right? Because if the Cowboys win out and the Eagles win out, the Eagles are in. If the Cowboys lose this game and the Eagles lose to Seattle, it still doesn't really matter. Philadelphia would still get in. So the Cowboys really need the Eagles to lose to the Giants. But it's still a big game for the Cowboys and their confidence. They have to prove that they can go on the road against a superstar quarterback and win a game. If you do that, I think it gives them a lot of confidence that they could go to San Francisco. And I know that's a better team, but go to San Francisco and beat the 49ers in the divisional round of the playoffs.
Narratively, honestly, you couldn't have written a better story for how the Cowboys need to get right in order to play San Francisco in the playoffs again, right? You have to beat the Eagles. They beat the Eagles. You have to play a playoff team on the road. A good playoff team on the road. That's what we're going to get next week. And then the following week, you have to do the same thing, except against a Shanahan-based offense, which is what you'll obviously face in San Francisco. Yes. So it is kind of crazy how narratively these last 4 games are kind of working you into shape to get ready for the heavyweight fights that will happen in the playoffs.
So again, this game obviously in Buffalo. That means December 17th. You can expect the weather to be a part of this game. We will dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have this many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is so quick and easy. They've even just launched the feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even better. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, later. Let's talk about the weather in Buffalo and how the Cowboys can adjust. So it's a late December game in Buffalo, which means you can expect rain. I saw the forecast, 80% chance of rain on Sunday. Steady wind, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour. And the temperatures at the high, like in the 46 to 48 range. How do you think the Cowboys do you think the Cowboys are built to handle this type of weather?
I don't know. I mean, I think we don't know, right? We haven't seen it, and I think it's funny that you're saying that you're going to a website to check the weather. Just open the window, Marcus.
Yeah,
what's the weather like?
It's cold.
Right now?
It's cold and windy.
It's cold and windy. You know what? Honestly, I did a news hit for WFA, which is a local Dallas station this morning. And before I was on, they did a weather hit, and frankly, the weather in Dallas is almost identical to what's going on in Buffalo. So maybe today out in practice, they'll get a nice little taste of what high 40s, low 50s feels like with rain and all that. I saw videos of Jake Ferguson dipping his hands into ice water and then catching the football, and they're gonna do all the different things to kind of get themselves ready. I don't think we'll really know until we get into the game, like exactly how this will play out. I think that the Cowboys have several players that have a history of playing in cold weather, including Ferguson. Obviously being a Wisconsin guy, he knows a little bit about cold weather.
Stephon Gilmore being drafted in Buffalo.
That's right. Gilmore is going to give them all the tips about what it's like to play in that stadium. He knows everything about it. I will say that the one element about the visiting disadvantage, I guess is how we should say that, right? Is that the Cowboys do have the benefit of playing on turf as opposed to grass.
And that's what I was going to mention. Yes.
I think that is something that is a big deal here because, look, as much as, playing in the weather and the elements is tough, I think everybody's played in the rain before. I don't think that that's a regional issue. The cold really isn't a factor in playing football.
Not freezing cold. It's cold, but it's 50s. Not. Yeah, you're talking about like the high 40s. Like
this is what Marcus calls summer. The temperature.
If you can see right now, I got shorts on, so a shorts and a t-shirt on.
So this is not, the weather shouldn't necessarily be a factor here, but I do think. Oh, the lights went out. See?
There you go. Spooky.
I do think that with the turf, being part of the ground, that's going to make things easier for the Cowboys because that's what they're used to. And the playing surface, to me, I think is more of a deal than like, the other aspects of the weather. So I think that is going to be a huge part of this game.
Yeah. So I've gotten to see lots of games in Buffalo when it's rainy. The good thing about that field is you're not turning it into a sloppy mess like we see in Pittsburgh or Cleveland at this time of year. Like you don't have to worry about that. The turf does get fairly slippery, and that's the only thing, but you're just going to adjust your cleats. You're going to wear a little bit longer cleats. The real issue is, and this is a good and a bad thing for Dallas.
Yeah.
If you're throwing the ball down the field, you can have problems because I'm telling you that the wind just whips in that stadium. I went to a game. Oh man, this is 2013, Geno Smith's rookie year, where he was just throwing these lollipops in the wind, and the wind would just blow it like completely to the sideline,
off the field, like
off the
stands.
field. Yeah. Dallas doesn't throw the ball downfield a ton. They throw in the short to the intermediate parts where the wind I don't think is going to be as big of a factor. For Josh Allen, he's got the arm to kind of cut through some of that wind, but at the same time, it can affect it a little bit. So I would say if you stick to the short and intermediate passing, you avoid trying to kick really long field goals because that's another part where the stadium, the wind just blows those kicks all over the place. But the key for the Cowboys is running the football. The Bills are not built to stop the run, especially with Matt Milano out of the game and with no AJ Epinesa. I'm not saying you need to run it 45 times in this game, but when you do run it, you have to be effective.
Yeah, and I think, on top of that, they just haven't gotten the kind of production out of, like Jordan Phillips. You've got someone like Ed Oliver, who is an incredible penetrating defensive tackle, but is an undersized guy. So you feel like if you can lean on him a little bit, that can work. Von Miller is still playing and still on the team. And it's kind of. Yeah, kind of. And I think, as much as he may have kind of fallen off as a pass rusher, he really has fallen off as a run defender.
He has no interest in playing the run. I mean, I'm just telling you from watching him this season.
It's
No
just,
interest.
yeah, he's not looking to stick his neck out there and to hurt himself. So, yeah, I do think that the Cowboys, if they can play kind of a more traditional, I mean, really, again, a playoff, type of game script where, you rely a little bit more on the run than you would normally. You throw the ball in the middle of the field where, frankly, Buffalo just doesn't have any answers, especially with Micah Hyde out this week. I
No,
mean,
it's
they're going to
Taylor
have a
Rapp
real.
playing.
Yeah, they're really going to have a hard time covering the middle of the field. So I do think that there is a lot of offensive opportunity. And frankly, what we could end up saying is that the weather, it may actually end up benefiting the Cowboys
It
more
might.
than the Buffalo. Like it's legitimately worth mentioning just because, part of Josh Allen's appeal is the ability to get the ball down the field and make plays like that. If it's incredible windy, obviously you can still do that, but it's a real roll of the dice to kind of live and die by that. So, if the Cowboys can kind of find a defense that will work to kind of keep it all in front of them, that will also allow them to kind of stop Josh Allen, similar to what they did with Hurts. They got to make sure he's not breaking the pocket, creating that way, and then just picking up first downs with his legs.
That's what scares me is what couple of things. I think Josh Allen's going to have to run because of the weather a little bit. They're also just a really dangerous team when Josh Allen is committed to running the ball 10 to 12 times a game. And now with the Bills being in kind of do or die territory with their season, they're not worried about trying to preserve Josh Allen's body. They're just worried about trying to win games. So that part of it does have me a little bit concerned. But on Wednesday's show, Landon, you and I talked about the players that if they step up could help take this Cowboys team to the next level. This is a Rico Dowdle game to me.
Yeah.
We saw last week Isaiah Pacheco ran crazy against this Buffalo defense before he got hurt. If Rico Dowdle can give you 12 to 14 carries and just punish the smaller linebackers of the Bills, that's how you beat this Bills team.
Yeah, and the other guy I would say throw in there as well is, and I mean this in both sides of his game, is this is a Jake Ferguson game. Like this is a game where you want Ferguson burying guys on the end of the line of scrimmage in the run game, and then the pass game dominating that seam area, dominating that middle of the field area. None of those linebackers are going to be able to keep up with Ferguson. No. And they're also going to have to be concerning themselves with CeeDee Lamb is going to be working inside a lot as well. So I do think that, yes, they need to find a way to attack the edges of this defense in the run game, make them flow all in one direction, and then pop out the back end with a play action bootleg and pick up big chunk yards with shorter throws that can give you big yak. That's how you win in the passing game on a windy day where you can't necessarily push the ball down the field.
Yeah. So really quickly, the Micah Hyde injury is huge because he's the guy that was playing in the box, helping cover some of the slot receivers, helping cover the tight ends. Without him, the Bills have a couple options. They could go with Taylor Rapp, who we remember coming out of the draft in 2019. He is PFF's lowest graded safety this year.
And he's injured. And he's nicked up a little bit on top of that.
He's got a neck injury. I believe he is going to play this week.
Yeah.
So that's one of the options. The other one, you could go DeMar Hamlin, who's played 9 defensive snaps this year. Or you could play Josh Norman at safety, who has yet to play a defensive snap. Yes, that Josh Norman, who played for the Panthers back in 2014, 2015.
The year 2000, I think, is when he played for the
he's playing special teams right now, but he's converted to safety. It's got to be a big Jake Ferguson game. And I think a Luke Schoonmaker as well. Like, I would love to see Dallas use a lot of 2 tight end sets in this game. And not necessarily just to run the ball, but just to give Buffalo something different to have to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, anytime that you've got young linebackers, they don't have Milano. Obviously, that's a huge loss, like we keep mentioning. Anytime you got young linebackers, you want to confuse their eyes, right? And it's a lot easier to confuse their eyes in 12 personnel where they're looking at run fits, and then they have a tight end going behind them in misdirection. So I do think that we'll see a lot of 12 personnel just to kind of be a stabilizing force to help help with the run game, and then using the kind of quick reaction to pull the trigger to come downhill on run plays against the linebackers by popping up and throwing the ball behind them in front of the safeties.
All right, let's make our predictions for Week 15, Bills versus Cowboys next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself. And the holidays are a great time to do that. So, whether it's by starting therapy, maybe going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, us dads, man, how awesome would that be? Just to get a full day of getting to rest, lay around the couch. Remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers, Landon and I will be back on Monday to break down Bills Cowboys from week 15. You won't want to miss that. But Landon, let's make our predictions for this game. Who do you got?
I got to tell you, I spent the entire week telling myself that I was going to pick the Bills this week because, look, I picked the Cowboys a lot. I have a lot of confidence in this team. But there's some games that you go into these things and it's just, it's a tough matchup. You're not going to win every single one of these games. And I just felt like this was a lot. We talked about why it's going on the road against a team that desperately needs to win with all the reasons that we've mentioned previously. Right. And the news of Micah Hyde and AJ Epinesa. And again, we haven't even talked about the fact that Epinesa, besides having 6.5 sacks, is probably one of their best run defenders.
He is their best run defender. So what they've been doing is they've been taking Epinesa starts on first and second down, and then it's Von Miller coming in third down and Epinesa kicking over inside a defensive tackle. Now it's you play Von Miller more snaps, which they won't do because they're terrified of having him play more. Or now it's Leonard Floyd playing that other edge spot. And we know Leonard Floyd's not really a run defender.
Yeah. So, I think it already creates more problems in an area of a defense that was having problems specifically defending the run and defending the middle of the field against the pass. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys. I think I'm starting to believe that this team is different this year, and it's you kind of guard yourself from those feelings as a Cowboys fan, every year out. Sure. You've learned your lesson. You've learned, I'm going to make them prove this to me. I think the Cowboys are going to prove this to us this weekend. It's going to be an incredibly tough game. I think Buffalo, like I said, is a wild animal cornered right now. And I think that the previous iterations of these good Cowboy teams would lose this game. But I don't think this is one of those previous iterations. I think this Cowboys team is different. And so I'm going to pick them to win a close one, 25-22. I think, a run heavy game that, that gets just enough in the air to kind of win it out. And I predict a Herculean effort from Josh Allen. But it just comes up short. The difference to me is that this Cowboys team tackles better than probably any team in the league. And I just think that they're going to limit the ability of the Bills offense to create big plays if they can't throw the ball down the field. Josh Allen's going to get his,
Yeah.
But I think the Cowboys are going to be able to limit big plays, and then they'll be able to limit the points scored. And I think Dallas will be able to move the ball consistently against this Buffalo defense.
So I'm with you. I think this Cowboys team is different from what we've seen in 2022, 2021, 2016. I just don't know if they win this game. And that's not to say that, that they're not a good team and they're not capable of winning this game. A lot of times in the NFL, the more desperate team does win these games, especially at home. I'm going to give you two predictions. I think the Bills win this game, and then I think the Cowboys win out. I think they beat Miami in Miami, and then I think they beat the Lions and then the Commanders. I just think this is the one game that they slip up a little bit because you're going up against the best quarterback of the next 4 games. It is in Buffalo. But I'm going to go 20. Let's do a weird score. Let's go 26-21. Something in that range where the Bills are able to move the ball. They score touchdowns in the red zone. And they win the game. But I could very easily see the Cowboys just having one of these games like they did against the Jets in week 2, where they take the ball the first drive of the game and it's 12 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. And that's just kind of how the rest of the game goes. I really do feel like it's a toss-up here.
Yeah, these are two very good teams, and two of the best. I would say two of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And so it's hard to kind of nail down exactly what's going to happen. But I think no matter what, we're probably going to get a pretty good game.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Again, we post videos on YouTube every single day, so make sure you check those out. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game, and we will see you right back here on Monday.